I am a very strong believer in what we put our faith in is what we'll begin to experience in our life. But the problem is we don't always have a complete idea or a complete picture of what faith actually is. Because we'll say we have our faith in God or we have our faith in a situation, but whenever we really look at ourselves and how we're responding in any given situation or how we respond to God whenever things don't always go our way, it reveals a lot of what we're actually putting our faith in. Because in Hebrews 11:1, it says, "Now faith is the assurance, the confirmation, the title deed of the things we hope for, being the proof of things we do not see and the conviction of their reality. Faith perceiving as real fact what's not revealed to the senses." This is one of my favorite verses in the Bible because I think it just sums up our life experience so much. Faith is the assurance, the confirmation, the title deed of things we hope for. And what's interesting about that word hope here, or the phrase things hope for, is it's not hope as we think of hope. It's not I hope things change. It's there's an expectation that goes with it. It's a confident expectation in salvation. Now, salvation, the word sozo in Greek, that's just complete, wholeness, prosperous, healed. Everything you need for life and godliness is contained in that word salvation. So now we have this. Faith is a confident expectation that everything that God says about me is true, and that's going to impact my life because there's substance to this stuff. There's evidence to what's not seen. But I'm not hoping that it happens. I'm expecting it to because I know who I am. I know the power that I possess. So whenever you start to look at yourself differently, you start to look at God differently, you'll start to notice your expectations start to go up. Your expectation on life, your expectation on your circumstances. When you see yourself the way that God sees you, and when you see God for who he truly is, everything changes. So if you want to know what you're actually putting your faith in, where are your expectations? Are you expecting things to change, or are you hoping things change? Because you're the son of a king. You're the daughter of a king. You're royalty. So why are we hoping that things change whenever he's already given us everything we need to move through this life differently? We got to raise our expectations on life, raise our expectations on our own abilities. I remember whenever my daughter, she's 14 now, but she was just around 2 years old, and I was a youth pastor at a church, but I wasn't just a youth pastor. I was everything. I swept, I mowed, I painted, I did all sorts of things. And one of the jobs I also had was media. And so our pastor sent us to Best Buy to go pick up some cables and all this different stuff at Best Buy. And I had my little 2-year-old daughter with me, and so we were walking in, and people always talk about the terrible twos. And I've never liked that idea because, now you've dropped your expectation for this kid. You're giving them an excuse to act a fool. And this might sound cheesy to you, but I was always saying how we're not going to have the terrible twos in the Zeller house. We're going to have the terrific twos. And not saying that they're never going to lose their temper or as they're discovering their little personalities, that things are always going to be perfect necessarily, but we're not going to just drop our expectations on our kids because they're a certain age or, a number of excuses that parents come up with because they don't want to accept responsibility for their kids. But anyway, so we're at Best Buy. This is the first time I actually implemented this whole idea of expectation with my children. And so we were walking around, and she started knocking things off the rack that was in there, all the little wires and things. She just started knocking them off. And I said, "If you do that one more time, we're going to leave." And she looked at me, and she swatted it one more time and knocked one more thing off the counter. And I put the stuff back on the counter. I scooped her up. I left the cart there. If you worked at the Best Buy in Pueblo West, Colorado back in 2012, sorry, you had to pick up after me. But anyway, I picked her up and she just was flipping out. This was the tantrum to end all tantrums she was having. And I went and we got in our sweet minivan at the time. We've had 3 since then, but we got in our minivan and I drove home, which was about 5 minutes from the Best Buy. And I sat her down and she was so mad because I followed through on what I was going to say. She didn't think I was going to. She was testing her little boundaries there. And anyway, I sat her down and I said, listen, you need to control your emotions. And that's another thing with my kids. I always have told them you're allowed to have emotions. Emotions are healthy. You can have negative emotions and positive emotions, and across the board, you can be sad and mad and glad, all of it, but we're not going to be driven by our emotions. We're going to learn to control ourselves. And so now I have this opportunity with a 2-year-old who's discovering her personality. I have her sitting in front of me and I say, you're going to control yourself or you're going to go sit in your room for a while. And she just kept screaming. I said, all right, well, and this is a 2-year-old I'm talking to this like, and it's amazing what these kids can understand whenever you just raise your expectations a little bit. And I said, you can come out whenever you're done acting this way. And she didn't even make it to her door. And she was able to calm down, come back. We hugged and we talked about it. And from that point on, we didn't have to deal with those things anymore, because every time it started to lean in this emotional direction, again, it's okay to have emotions. It's not okay to be driven by your emotions. And I said, and some of you are probably watching this like, this guy isn't letting his kids be kids, but I'm telling you, we have avoided so many issues that a lot of parents have with their kids because we set a higher expectation on our kids. We didn't say, oh, she's just 2 and she's going to be like this. Of course, they're going to have those moments, but what are you going to do in those moments? Are you going to learn control and raise an expectation? Or are you going to give into it and let them just destroy your life like sometimes you see? My point is, I saw this take place in our little 2-year-old daughter, and then I saw it in our son, and then I saw it again in our other daughter. We have 3 kids, and we've done it this way with all 3, and it's gone very, very well for us. And this isn't a video about how to raise your kids. I mean, this is not that channel. But my point is, if I raised my expectations for my 2-year-old daughter and she was able to harness her emotions in a way and then move more positively from there on out, how much more are we capable of? If we raise our expectations of ourselves rather than giving into every little negative emotion or negative circumstance that comes our way. I mean, sometimes these big things happen in our life and it does knock us down. But if we can't handle the little things in life, how in the world are we going to handle the big things in life? We have to learn to raise our expectations. That's what faith is. It's a positive expectation or a confident expectation in what salvation has provided for us. You have the power of God that raised Christ from the dead dwelling on the inside of you. You are the temple of the Holy Spirit. All this is true. You're righteous and holy and blameless and blessed. All these things are true about you. And now, do you believe it? Is your faith in those things? Well, I'll tell you how to get the answer. Look at where your expectations are. Are they down on the floor because life is hard and this is the card that you've been dealt? Or are things starting to change and you start to have a brighter outlook on life? Because if you think about the things that we put faith in or we have a confident expectation in, you'll realize that you do it all the time. I mean, when you're driving down the street, it still baffles me sometimes. I have these moments when I'm driving, it's kind of a windy road and I live right north of Houston, so there's a lot of people here, and we're just driving along and we just have this expectation that everyone's going to stay in these lines. And there's no wall. It's just this imaginary boundary. And we're just going down these windy roads and we have an expectation that people are going to stay where they're meant to stay. And whenever somebody gets outside of that expectation, it upsets us. what if we went through life that way? What if we had a confident expectation in life? We set the bar up here, and then we're so disappointed when it isn't up, when our results aren't up here. We do everything that we can to get up to that point. I hope that made sense. Just think about the things that you put your faith in. The chair that you're sitting in possibly right now. You didn't hope that the legs of the chair withstood your weight. You just expected them to, because that's what chairs do. They do their job. Their job is to hold my weight when I sit down. I shouldn't have to hope that it holds my weight. And you can think of a number of different things. The TV, when you push the remote and it should turn on. When it doesn't turn on, you get frustrated by it. Like, what is going on? And you start questioning whether or not everything is working the right way. So whenever we're moving through life and we have this certain expectation on life, we don't start beating ourselves up because our circumstances didn't match our expectation. We start to look at things, and just like on a television, if it doesn't turn on, we start to make sure all the wires are plugged in the right way, or did the internet go out, or did I pay my electric bill, or whatever it might be. We start to diagnose the issue and approach it differently. We're not just mad and we just throw the remote down and cross our arms and pout and cry and call our friends because our TV didn't work. We diagnose the problem and then start to work it out. When life knocks you upside the head, because life knocks us upside the head sometimes, rather than just throwing stuff around and pouting and calling our friends and complaining about how life is so hard, why don't we take a step back and diagnose the problem? Have my expectations up here, my circumstances are down here. Why? What happened? Where was my mind? What could I do differently next time in order to have a better outcome? It's really that simple. This isn't rocket science, but I think we get so wrapped up in the emotions of life that we miss out on the bigger picture. Again, for like the fifth time, it's okay to have emotions. It's not okay to get wrapped up in them and to be driven by those emotions, because you give in a little bit and it starts to spiral out of control. My natural tendency is depression, anxiety. I've been free of that for a while now, but if I don't have this expectation on life, or if I drop my guard down a little bit, that anxiety starts to creep back in, or that depression starts to sneak back in. But now I've lived at this certain level of expectancy for so long, whenever those things start to creep in and it causes me to dip a little, it feels like foreign to me. Like, this isn't who I am. What am I doing? And I assess where I've been lately. Where's my mind been? Where's my expectation on life? And I have to be intentional and build myself up and start to work out my salvation with fear and trembling. I start to approach things in a whole new way. That's what faith is. So think about the things that you have faith in, that you don't give a second thought about. You just have this expectation, and then shift that mindset to bigger things. Your career. Are you working at a job you hate to buy things you don't need, to impress people you don't like? Or are you doing something that actually brings fulfillment to your life? Are you struggling in all these different areas, whether it's emotionally, financially, across the board, whatever it is in your life? Are you struggling in those areas? Take a step back. Where's your expectation? What's your faith in those moments? Do you believe what God says about your circumstances or not? The evidence, your experiences of that you're going through right now aren't necessarily evidence of your faith. I'm saying that whenever you start to look at your circumstances from a different perspective, things will begin to change.